Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Monday, the 9th of September, comes to you from London. And we start by looking at the dollar index. It's been falling away on the basket of currencies for the last few days now, but it is still bullish on the medium and long term charts, and the short term point and figure chart still has upside targets. So we expect the dollar to return to a position of strength in the coming days. Looking at the euro, we're seeing the euro is actually looking a little bit stronger against that dollar, but we do still have these targets hanging over us to the downside. So don't be surprised to see that euro reversing. And the short-term signal for this is the yen. We're seeing the dollar actually climbing against the yen, which tells us that we probably will see the dollar reverse in the coming day or two. Looking at sterling, we are looking bullish against the dollar here, so quite interesting that we're actually managing to hold on to some gains against the dollar, and this is more about the dollar just pulling back probably than sterling rising, although it is interesting with the political turmoil that sterling is still holding its strength. And if we look at the euro, much the same picture, and against the Swiss franc as well, but of course the medium and long term charts are still pretty dire for sterling. Taking a look at Bitcoin, we see where at the $10,000 level, but we're back into bearish territory, and we have got targets to 10,000 and just below 10,000. So it could go either way, Bitcoin. We've still got targets to the upside, very big targets of around 30%, and a couple of downside targets. We have got one downside target of 30%. So it's very hard to call. We're in this sideways range. We're either going to break up or we're going to break down, and it's too early to say which. Last week, the US stock market had a pretty good week. We see that there with a weekly candle on the S&P 500 index, and we've broken out of this triple bottom, almost a bit like a head and shoulders here, inverted, but we've broken out, so we are looking better, and we've got an upside target of some 5%. So the US market is actually looking stronger than it has done for quite a few weeks, and the same with the NASDAQ. We were climbing there last week as well, had a pretty strong week, and the Dow was also up on Friday about 0.25%, and it's climbing quite strongly as well. The Russell 2000 has been the laggard index. We are in short-term bullish territory here now, but the medium and long-term charts still have work to do. The futures this morning, we're seeing the S&P future up slightly, up 0.16%, and the Nasdaq E-mini up 0.15%. So it's very hard to call the US market based on those changes. So at the moment, we'd say the market looks set to open flat. Looking at the FTSE 100, we're also fairly flat this morning. We are still bearish in the medium and long-term charts, but short-term we're looking a bit better. And looking at the FTSE midcaps, here we're seeing quite a steady trend over the last several weeks, just rising. So midcaps have performed better. We're bullish on the medium-term chart. The long-term chart still has a little bit of work to do. The DAX this morning is up slightly, so we're short-term bullish here. Medium-term, we're just entering bullish territory again. And of course, the CAC Quarante we're also seeing is also rising as well. Looking at the Tokyo index, we're up nearly 1% overnight. Weaker yen helping there as well. The Hang Seng was flat, little change there, but we are still bearish on the medium and long-term charts. And the Chinese market was up nearly 1%. Just starting to look a little bit more bullish on that medium-term chart. So we are seeing a little bit of a recovery there. The Sensex in India was up 0.5%. So that's looking a little bit better, but still has work to do on that short and medium term chart. It has lagged a bit lately, the Indian market, and looking at the Oz market, it was little change, but it is still bullish on all three time frames. Brent crude is up 0.5% this morning, so we're looking quite strong there on the short term chart, still medium and long term bearish. WTI also looking quite good on that medium term chart, just starting to look a bit better. US NatGas sitting at $2.51, so we've seen quite a substantial rise here in the last couple of days, and we are turning back to medium-term bullish. The first time we've seen that in months. So US NatGas now looking better. We've got upside targets in the 260s, 267, 270. So we are seeing an improvement there. Looking at gold, we're back to the $1,500 mark, 1506 this morning. So that's put us into short-term bearish territory at the moment, but the medium and long-term charts still look very bullish. Silver, similarly, short-term bearish. US 10-year yields actually strengthening now to 1.59%. So they, on Thursday, Friday last week, we saw a little bit of a reversal. And here we see the weekly candles. The first time we've seen a few weeks of up movement. So we are just starting to see an improvement in yields. Does suggest the big move in bonds is starting to come to an end. And if we look at German bond prices, we saw here the bond price actually diving on that improvement in yields. So we are seeing quite a sell-off in the bond market at the end of last week. Looking to stocks now, on Friday we had the Dow. The best performer in the Dow was actually Intel Corporation, up 1.6%, and that's looking certainly like it's going back into bullish medium-term territory there. The Home Depot shares are up 1.3%, and they were looking pretty good as well. But Microsoft, if we look here, Microsoft actually the worst performer. They were actually struggling a bit, but they've still outperformed the market by 20%. And it's really that sell-off on Friday, the worst performer in the Dow, has little bearing on Microsoft's performance. Looking at the Nasdaq, we saw Lululemon Athletica. They were up 7.8%. That stock looking amazing, breaking to new highs. And Symantec was the next best performer, up 4.5%. And again, looks like they are seeing a bit of a reversal of fortunes there. If we look at the downside, we see AMD, they're down 2.9%, so they were struggling, but the chart still looks pretty good. And Monster Beverage were down 2.7%. They're not looking as good, and the chart and in bearish territory there. And the Aussie market, we saw the best performer was Eurocabra. They were up 5%, not enough to arrest the downside on this chart, still looking pretty bearish. And on the downside, we had Regis Resources. They were down 7%, but the chart actually managed to hold up, just a fall away there, looking like we might be entering bearish territory on the short-term chart. Taking a look at the Indian market now, the Nifty 50, UPL was the best performer. They were up 2.7% overnight. And on the downside, we had HCL Technologies. They were down 1.6%, so not looking as good there. Taking a look now at Europe this morning, looking at the UK market, Centrica, the best performer this morning. The chart actually looking still pretty dire, so that's quite a big fall overall, even though the stock is up this morning. EasyJet down 3.5%, and of course we are seeing AB Foods down on their sales. Primark disappointing this morning, so they're down 3%, and IAG on the British Airways strike, they're down nearly 3% as well, so that's affecting them. Taking a look at the 250 now, the best performer into properties, they're up 12%, so it's quite a big rise there, but not enough to change the chart. Looks pretty awful. And on the downside, we see here we've got Hochschild Mining, they're down 3%, but the stock itself actually looking like it's making a reversal into bullish territory. Into Europe now, the top 50 stocks in Europe, SocGen in Paris, they're up 1.3%, not enough to change the chart, looks pretty grim. And Volkswagen down up 1.3%, again, just starting to look like Volkswagen might be breaking to bullish territory, still has work to do on that long-term chart. And on the downside, we've got LVMH, they're down. Interesting to see most of the banks actually rising this morning in Europe, so looking a little bit better there. And here we see LVMH. They've outperformed the market by nearly 30% this year, so looking still pretty good. And here we see the live prices coming in from Yahoo Finance. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.